happened to Cole? So ridiculous. Cole's out today. That is not his skeleton. So, I think everyone has the max that does it for them, right? For me, it's if I'm on a date and I am asked, if someone says this to me on a date, I was thinking about this political subject. Would you give me your thoughts on it? That's how I react. For Trump right now, it's, when someone asks him, have you thought of going to war with this country? That's what gets him to use a noise. And it comes into play here with not only his invasion of Venezuela and a bunch of questions about what's going to happen there and updates obviously throughout the show, but let me just list to you in the last 48 hours who he suggested military action against. Venezuela, okay, that's obvious, that happened. Colombia, Cuba, Iran, and that's more Lindsay, but Trump's been signing hats that say make Iran great again, and Greenland, an ally. So here's the first pretty disturbing audio.
Colombia is very sick too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
What does that mean? He's not going to be doing it very long.
He's not doing it very long. He has cocaine mills and cocaine factories. He's not going to be doing it very long.
So there will be an operation by the U.S. and
it sounds
Colombia?
good to me.
Sounds good to me. Yeah, sure. I don't like that leader. Let's overthrow him too. Why not? So it's not just what we're talking about in this huge, unprecedented, globally impactful event of Maduro being captured as it's being described. Now he's on trial. I'll give you updates on that. But also stuff like this. Trump talking about even Greenland again.
By the way, I will say this about Greenland. We need Greenland from a national security situation. It's so strategic. Right now, Greenland is covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need Greenland from the standpoint of national security. And Denmark is not going to be able to do it, I can tell you.
What would the justification be, sir? What would the justification
to boost up security in Greenland? They added one more dog sled. It's true.
Sir,
they thought that was a great move.
What would the justification be for a claim?
So we're already allied with Denmark. We can already cooperate with them as we do to make sure that Greenland is operating in our military interest. But he's just willy-nilly saying sovereignty be damned wherever I see it interesting to me to invade, to take over. And he has a list, a wish list of places that he wants to take military action against. You have him saying this about Greenland. Well, he tells you he wants it. That's what he says. Somewhere in this article, he says it's going to happen. And the reaction is obvious from the Danish prime minister. I believe one should take the American president seriously when he says that he wants Greenland. But I will also make it clear that if the U.S. chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including NATO, and thus the security that has been established since the end of the Second World War. I think it's hard for people to comprehend the damage that Trump is doing. The decades and decades of work that has been put into these relationships, into these cooperative military defense organizations, into making sure that when we call a country or a group of countries needing something and wanting to leverage our relationship for something in our interest, they respond and they're interested. And he's just laying waste to that. And to say it right after or during an invasion of Venezuela, I think adds a layer of oomph to it, making it not just the rantings of Trump, but much more real, as the Danish prime minister was trying to emphasize. And then on Venezuela specifically, Trump continues to just confirm what this is about. While you watch this clip, please do click the subscribe button if you appreciate the show. If you are not horny for war, click the subscribe button. If you are, I don't know what to tell you.
Speak with them before the operation took place.
Yes.
Did you maybe tip them off about what
Before and after, and they want to go in, and they're going to do a great job for the people of Venezuela, and they're going to represent us well.
So he says that oil companies were notified of this before and after the operation, but not Congress. Oil companies were kept more informed than the governmental body that's supposed to approve military action like this. Insane. Absolutely insane. Then Lindsey Graham, don't even get me started with what gets him going because it's nasty. But one of the things is this. He's just on the plane for some reason. Why are you here, Lindsey? And he goes, hey, Trump, what about Cuba?
Could have done it. And as to this commander-in-chief, he did something people talked about doing. You just wait for Cuba. Cuba is a communist dictatorship that's killed priests and nuns. They've preyed on their own people. Their days are numbered. We're going to wake up one day, I hope in 26, in our backyard, we're going to have allies in these countries doing business with.
There are so many horrific regimes. True. Is it not exactly diametrically opposed to the campaign promises of Trump to go around the world and use our military to choose who's in power? Isn't that like exactly what he ran against? Isn't that exactly what got dum-dums who used to proclaim himself to be liberal to go, I think Trump is the better option than Kamala because he's against war. He's against being the world's police. And what's interesting is through the very alliances, obviously we're two separate conversations are happening. The Venezuela, Cuba, etc. conversation versus Trump's discussions of Greenland. And that's where I'm citing our alliances. But the damage that he's doing there actually undermines the way we've been able to, when we're doing it correctly, police the world without putting American lives at risk and without just invading willy-nilly. Leveraging those relationships is how we see our will done across the world without catastrophic Iraq-style military decisions. But then Lindsey, that's not enough for him. He loves the wish list idea, and he wanted to add to it Iran.
They've chosen not to live this way anymore. And unlike Obama, President Trump has not turned his back on the people of Iran. So I pray
America first
and hope that 2026 will be the year that we make Iran great again.
And he put on, podcast listeners, a Make Iran Great Again hat. Because America first. Okay, number one, that's the noise Lindsey makes when he thinks about invading Iran. But number two, that's the noise I make, and it's a very different one of shock and horror at remembering all the conversations I had where I went, hey, couldn't we give and shouldn't we continue to give military aid and support to Ukraine? Our ally aligns way more with our ideals, sovereign country being invaded, geopolitically in our interest for them not to fall, so that Russia has a harder time invading. And they would go, no, because America first and isolationism. Now, many of those same people, some of them are speaking out against this, but many of the same people are bending themselves into pretzels to say it was in the interest of this American isolationism and America first ideology to cheer on Russia and not support Ukraine, or at least just not support them purely financially because we don't want to involve ourselves in matters of the world. We need to spend that money here, was the argument. But this does work because we think it's in our interest, even if tons of resources, geopolitical destabilizations, etc. happen because of this decision making. One of the biggest political contradictions we've ever seen. And by the way, a lot of outlets have been reporting that no one was killed. The New York Times is reporting that at least 40 people were killed, including civilians, in this operation. Here's a photo of Nicolas Maduro, who was, of course, captured in Venezuela, being perp walked with a very funky hat on, a very Mickey Mouse ears sort of hat going on there. I don't know what that's about. And I do want to give you some of the updates on the trials itself. Let's start with this.
Has now entered the courtroom. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you were going to say
that Maduro shackled at his ankles, and he walked in with his hands behind his back, but he wasn't shackled at his wrists.
So ankle shackles are unusual in the Southern District of New York. It's typical that a prisoner would be handcuffed, but those ankle cuffs are only used where the marshals and the Bureau of Prisons have determined that there's some sort of genuine risk here. Now, is he going to take off and flee out of the courthouse? Of course not, but it shows the higher level of security and precaution
and
that they're taking.
He's wearing headphones, presumably. That's
for interpretation.
Yeah.
Can you imagine you're just sitting at a coffee shop in New York City? You're like, oh, wow, a guy just ran by. That's so weird. He was wearing a prisoner outfit. You know who that Madara, what's that guy? Hey, Ron, that guy who just ran by, didn't he look so much like that? Who was that guy? I think he's the president of some South American country. Maduro Ozempic? No. Maduro, that looks so much like Maduro. He just runs by if they don't shackle his legs. And then you have this, obviously, Maduro's pleading guilty. Now, remember, the dangers and the illegality of Trump's military action is one thing, and is true, and justifies plenty of opposition. And Trump's talking about running Venezuela, but then not even supporting the opposition leader who was previously backed by the United States to be president and saying, she's not so respected, but we'll go ahead and run Venezuela for everybody. Insane. And also, while being opposed to that, we can recognize Maduro is psycho. And so he's going to be saying, I'm such a great guy. I'm so innocent. Shut up. Hey, Trump, stop. Hey, Maduro, shut up.
Yeah, he says he was captured and detained. He says, I'm innocent. I'm not guilty. I'm a decent man.
To which the judge says there will be time to argue that later.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's not what we're here to do at this moment. The judge then asked if Maduro has read the indictment. The counsel, about whom we just spoke, answered for him and says it's been summarized for him and that he understands it. Maduro then waived the public reading of the charges, says he will read them himself. The judge did then read him as...
So it's saying not guilty to drug, or pleading not guilty to drug and weapons charges. And their primary argument here is him engaging or assisting in drug trafficking, which is bad and people should be held accountable for, like that guy who Trump pardoned.
All right, you got to stop buying generic Viagra if y'all over 40. You can get 9 pills of 100 milligram generic Viagra for just $7 with free shipping from Friday Plan. If you think it's a scam like I did at first, peep this. No doc visits, no phone calls.
Just keep remembering that. What an insane timeline we're in. Now let me show you a comparison of takes on this. Some people are having very level-headed, correct takes, like James Tallarico. Some people are not.
Yesterday, we saw flashes of the Iraq War. I'm 36 years old. I was 12 on September 11th, 2001. I saw the importance of keeping this country safe. As a millennial, I also saw how military disasters like the Iraq War robbed this nation of young lives, of billions of dollars, and of our moral standing in the world. How do you look a parent in the eye and tell them you sacrificed their child's life for big oil's bottom line? I've said from the beginning of this campaign that the biggest divide in this country is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. And this new war is just the latest example of how billionaires run this country, run this economy, run this government, and now run our foreign policy. As U.S. Senator, I will never vote to send someone's son or daughter to war to make billionaires richer.
You hear it, you say, I understand the historical context. When we've tried to do things like this, it's failed miserably. I understand the international law aspect. I understand all the different points, and it makes sense. And it does seem that Trump is so hyped about oil companies making a bunch of money as opposed to whatever the real or the supposed justification for all of this is. That seems to be the real one. Now let me show you someone who nominally has the same take, but explains it in a very different way. That is Tucker Carlson.
We can safely discount democracy as a reason for affecting regime change in Venezuela. We're not going to go kill Nicolas Maduro because we don't like the way he's treating his people. It's possible we're mad that he doesn't allow gay marriage. That is a distinct possibility, but no one will say that out loud. Not defending the regime, just saying. One of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close, which is much smaller, of course. And by the way, the U.S.-backed opposition leader who would take Maduro's place if he were taken out is, of course, pretty eager to get gay marriage in Venezuela. So to those of you who thought this whole project was globo homo, not crazy, actually.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is not how you argue effectively why this is irrational on the part of Trump. I just had to remind you, that clip is so bonkers. Globo homo. Some people are saying, which is true, by the way, that this is in the interest of democracy. Oh, but we don't even like democracy. Oh. Others are saying this is because of oil. Maybe so. But I think this is because the opposition leader, or Marco Rubio, will make everyone in Venezuela.
It's January 7th, 2026, and the Trump Department of Justice, led by law lackey Pamela Joe, continues to just blow by the statutorily, legally required deadline to be able to turn over the entirety of the Epstein files. Now, not just the Epstein files that include documents relating to Ghislaine Maxwell and others. And as we sit here today, there remains no sense of urgency or exigency that is being expressed by Pamela Joe's DOJ. Why? Because apparently she thinks that she is above the law. And let me remind all of you that despite their protestations otherwise that they are hauling ass to be able to comply, compliance was supposed to happen last fucking month, December 19th. And unlike the regular progress and process in the judicial system, if there is an order or a law that requires you to comply by a date certain, you either get permission to be able to extend that deadline or you fucking comply. So unlike the regular Joes and Janes of the world as well, if we had a legally required deadline by which we were due to comply and we didn't do so, do you think that we would be sitting around echándose fresca, meaning just eating shit? Just kind of saying, yeah, we're going to do it when we do it? And yet here we live in the lawlessness of Trump regime 2.0. And look, don't take my word for it. Let's take the word of Todd Blanche and Pamela Joe. In a letter dated January 5th, 2026, to the Honorable Federal Judge Paul Ingemaer, who is the presiding judge over the United States versus Ghislaine Maxwell case in the Southern District of New York. This was filed on January 5th, publicly on the record. It's on the docket. Anybody can see it. And within this multi-page letter, this 5-page letter, there's a lot of excuses and no mea culpas. Like, really, like, no, I'm sorry that we haven't met this deadline, but let me give you the dog ate my homework excuses as to why we continue to violate the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which, lest they be confused as shitty lawyers, what an act means, it's a fucking law. It's not a suggestion. But hey, let's get into the contents of this letter because, yes, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, domestically and internationally. But this is important stuff to remind people the facts and what's going on. So again, this letter is addressed to Judge Ingemaer, and it basically says, we are complying not only with the law, but we're also complying with this court's order that required a certification from the Southern District of New York that we had done a pre-publication victim privacy-related review and redaction of certain of the materials that are required to be published pursuant to the Epstein Files Act. And again, lots of excuses. Since our last letter dated December 19th, we have done the following, quote, the department has continued its efforts to identify, process, and review materials from various components of the department, and the SDNY and the department have worked together, including with input from various counsel for victims, to refine our review and redaction procedures. Footnote, we're going to get to it in a couple of minutes. The Epstein Files Transparency Act sets forth clearly what can qualify for purposes of redaction.
Our girls love learning, but in school it felt like they were not being properly challenged. Before IXL, it seemed like something was missing. We knew they had the capacity to do more. We just didn't know how to bring that out of them until now. IXL is a comprehensive learning platform. It has all the core subjects and covers from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. If they get a problem wrong, it has a detailed but very simple explanation to help them understand. IXL has given them the courage to tackle difficult problems and to not be afraid to get questions wrong, because that's how you learn. Since starting IXL, Asterisk
redaction of victims and survivors and in of their confidential, privacy-related information, a no-brainer. But I'm going to explain to you that Todd Blanche, Pamela Joe, they've been taking liberties when it comes to redactions that y'all have also detected as well when you've looked at these various tranches of documents having been document dumped on the DOJ website. And you've noticed that redactions have happened that were not supposed to be removed. To date, and again, this letter is dated January 5th, 2026. The department has now posted to the DOJ Epstein Library webpage approximately 12,285 documents comprising approximately 125,575 pages in response to the act. And there are more than 2 million documents potentially responsive to the act that are in various phases of review. Footnote 1, it refers to. The letter then provides a definition of how they're referring to the term, quote, document. And they're saying it refers to materials of various types and sizes, including without limitation, internal emails, internal memoranda, FBI interview notes, draft charging documents, Bureau of Prisons materials, third-party subpoena returns, court filings, external communications, and various forms of media. And then here come the excuses again. Some documents have multiple pages. As a result, document counts and page counts are different, and the time required to review documents can vary substantially. They've known that the demand for the release of the Epstein files has been persistent. Heck, Donald Trump campaigned on it to get back to the Oval Office, that he would turn over the entirety of the Epstein files for purposes of transparency to the American people. Pamela Joe claimed earlier in 2025 that the Epstein files were sitting on her desk. And yet, once again, the dog ate my homework excuses as to why they continue to violate the law. This letter says that the prior letter of December 19th noted that there were, quote, hundreds of attorneys dedicated to the review at the time of that letter. Currently, and anticipated for the next few weeks ahead, in the range of over 400 lawyers across the department will dedicate all or a substantial portion of their workday to the department's efforts to comply with the act. These efforts include over 125 lawyers in the Southern District of New York, as well as dozens of lawyers from each of the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida, the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, and the National Security Division of the Department. Blanche and Bondi go on to say that there's more than 100 specially trained document analysts with experience in handling sensitive victim materials that are assisting the FBI. Like we're supposed to gain any type of assurances or comfort, seeing how they've already fucked up the rollout of what they've done so far, the 125,000 pages, they've already screwed up the victim-related redactions, and we're supposed to feel better knowing that there are, quote, more than 100 specially trained document and analysts with experience in handling sensitive victim materials? I don't think so. The letter says more than 2 million documents remain as potentially responsive to the act in various phases of review and redaction. This is a large volume of materials, and they remain to be reviewed in widely varied ways.